I was born in a small village of Haryana, a northern state in India. I come from a household where most of us are doctors and myself being the odd one out, an engineer. All my cousins are doctors. During the holidays, we all used to meet in the village. And whenever we discussed the lessons learned in formal education, I was feeling a bit different. All medical education students were talking about practical they do of whatever theory they are learning in the class. To be frank, that was not the case with me, and I was feeling a bit different. One fine day, I have been asked, will you go to a doctor who has never seen the patient? And obviously, the answer was no. I'm asking you, will you go to a doctor who has never seen a patient? Obviously, the answer is no. No one wants to take that kind of risk. And the follow-up question was, why would a company then hire an engineer who has never seen the patient, who has never practiced the theory he has learned during the formal education? To be very frank, I had no answer on that day. However, that conversation stuck with me. Later on, I have pursued my master's in management education. And from day one, I was focused in gathering the practical exposure and learning during my management education. I'm a big believer in science, and science taught us many things. It's an evidence-based approach. So much so that even the practitioners of science believe in practical. And hence, I was completely focused in trying out the practical, real, on-ground experience during those days. And obviously, I was not getting enough opportunities. On that day, I have decided that whenever I will be privileged to give that kind of exposure to the students, I will do my bit of it. And that is the reason I'm talking to you today. I don't want to give the random theory, but here my conversation is to do my bit of it to create the ecosystem where the students, especially the management students, are exposed to the real on-ground practical exposure before they join the industry. And my request to all the industries, please create enough opportunities for these students who can come and get the exposure of real on-ground practical education. When we look at the current MBA ecosystem, there is not much space for practical work. Most of things taught in B schools are theoretical. When I work with my peers, I don't ask them for any textbook definitions. I never ask them the management definitions. When we walk in the corridors of corporate, we discuss the practical solutions. And I would request each one of you to close your eyes and think about the practical exposure and the internships you have done and what kind of learnings you had. And please compare that with the textbook and theory you have learned. Which one you are practicing? Which one has helped you in the real corridor of corporates? The textbooks we study in B schools have cases of foreign countries with totally different environment. In India, the market is not same as in other countries. There are layers of market and each layer has further requirements. The textbooks which we read in MBA are not exactly written with the market requirements of India. There is an evidence gap between the education being provided and the industry requirements. Today in India, we have to work towards giving employment to our young generation. And if we need to do that, we have to bridge the gap of education and the skill set we need. This gap makes the process of hiring tedious because the process is dynamic. The market landscape is changing rapidly. Before COVID and after COVID, the scenarios have changed. But how many textbooks have changed in management education? What are we teaching? Before internet and after internet, things have changed. Before geo or after geo, industries have changed. But how many new textbooks have come? Hence, this gap has to be filled in, and it is only the practical, on-ground, real work and internships where students, and especially management students, will get this learning. Let me draw an analogy here. My grandfather got married and he was informed one day before that he is going to marry. When my father got married, he was only shown a passport size photograph and he has to agree to marry. When I got married, I was shown the girl's photo and got a chance to interact with her. But the next generation will not settle with that. They want to meet, they want to understand each other, and they don't want to settle with one day exposure. And that is similar to the hiring process evolved during last so many years. In my grandfather's time, even if you are educated and you fill up a form, you are going to get an appointment letter at home. During my father's time, he has to fill up a form and give an exam for that job, and he will get an offer. During my time, I have to fill up the form, give an exam, go for the group discussions and interviews, and I'll get the job. But in coming days, jobs will not come by just this much interaction. Both the employee and employer have to understand each other. And that's exactly what I'm doing right now in my company. We hire a lot of interns and give them PPO because the intern likes me and I like them. When the employee loves the company and the company loves the employee, that's the best marriage. And here, my request to all the institutions, management students, and the industry to create that ecosystem where we can have happy working together. People have this question, how will I know that I am supposed to marry this person? In similar way, how will you know which is the right company for you? So when you work on lots of projects, internships, you get a lot of exposure. And this develops an understanding in you whether you fit in the company for that job role or not. It gives you more clarity and confidence about that job. Especially in India, we have a lot of people who do business but have no formal education. All the streets of India are full of businessmen has no formal education. And yes, few of them are really successful. In other way, the formally educated MBAs are afraid to start their startups. We need to ask this question, is our formal education limiting people's mind to start new businesses? And to me, it is the practical, real, on-ground exposure they miss, whereas the uneducated businessman is getting it from their family. If you see the other countries, they have the culture of entrepreneurship starting from the school time. Their internships are embedded in their school education. whereas we have long years of education and lesser number of days for practical work. Time has come to broaden our vision and goals, even take into consideration factors like 5-year plan for the economy. We need to reimagine leadership and nurturing leadership through formal education. We need to develop mindsets. We need to create mindsets for warfare strategy. The landscape of business, the environment of business, and the needs of consumers and the ecosystem is changing rapidly. And hence, we need to work on nurturing the real-time leadership, developing the management lessons, theory versus practical. The management lesson has to be the amalgamation of theory and practical. And for me, the practical part is more relevant as of now. Please don't take this as a complaint, but this is a request, the conversation we need to start, and we can definitely debate on this, developing management lesson theory versus practical. And when we talk about the FMCG sector, a lot of students come to me and say, sir, we love FMCG and we want to join in FMCG. We have more salespeople in India than marketing folks. When someone says they are interested working in FMCG, we expect them to be comfortable visiting the small kirana stores and talking to the small retailers to understand their problem. And these so-called formally educated MBAs, when they go on ground for a week, come back and say that how much more field work they need to do. And that's not how FMCG works. There can be different options to integrate education and industrial exposure apart from the mandatory internship program. My ambition is to contribute to such an education ecosystem where the students and the corporation can connect to each other. There is a lot of practical work and both stakeholders get to learn from each other. Such an ecosystem will help develop better entrepreneurs, exposing them to an entry stage and not limiting their mind to the textbooks concepts. And the point here is that one should never become so much of a theoretical expert that stops gaining practical experiences. This is how you become a real master of business administration in your formal education. From last 5 years, I have been closely interacting and working with young students, and this is my mission. We are absolutely open to create opportunities for all the students who are looking for real, practical, on-the-ground exposure with us. And this is my humble invitation to each and every student in the country that we will create an opportunity for you to have that real-time exposure on the ground, which will create the learning for you and the connect with the industry. Driving value through internships, real, practical, on the ground is an idea worth spreading. All the best.